So modules are bits of code that someone else has written or that you yourself have written that you want to use in your program. So you might think of this as like the International Space Station that's up in space. It's not just this big building up there, it's actually just a bunch of modules that they've hooked together. So you might have a space module or you might have a sleeping module. There's just various functionality that they've been able to plug together to get everything that they need up there. That's the same way with our code. We have little bits of code that we want to use. We don't want to have to write it over again, and so we can use someone else's module. So for example, there's one module that I'm aware of that I'll just use right here, and that's the random module. So I'll just say import random, and it has to be its name, so I know that there is a module out there named random. And I can start to use its functions. So I say the name of the module, so random dot, and now I have access to all of its functions. So let's try the randint function. And the randint function, just like when we used raw input, it took a parameter. So it took the prompt as a string as the parameter, and then we know that it returned the result, right? So that was how we used the raw input function. The randint function is very similar. It's going to take, but in this case, it takes two parameters. So it takes the start. So if we want a random number between 10 and 20, it takes the start as 10 and the stop as 20. And then it's going to return the number. And so let's just print that out and let's try running this. Oops, wrong name. So there, when we run it, it gets 19. If we run it again, 19, 15, 12, 19, 10, got 19 a few times there. But it's essentially random. So when you run that, it's going to give you a random integer or a whole number between 10 and 20. There are other functions on it as well. You might try the random method. This one doesn't take any parameters, and what it does is it returns a number between 0 and 1 as a floating point. So in this case, you can see that the number is 0.8773, etc. And it's going to, give us a random one every single time. And so there are different ways that this is obviously just how you can use the random module. But let's say that, there's just a lot of modules out there that you can use. But there are different ways that you can actually import it into your program. So you can say import random as rand, because it's just annoying to say random every time. And now you can say rand.randint. And that will do the same thing. So it prints out 16. You can also say from random import random. And now all I'd have to do is say random and just call it like that. And we got to ditch that. So from random import random. And now we can just use the random function just like that. We could also say from random import randint and give it our 10 to 20 range. And over here you can see that it gave us 12. So this is a way, and what this is called is static importing. And so we're just statically importing the name of a function into our program so that we don't have to specify random.randint every single time. So one thing you have to be aware of is that now that you're importing the randint function, you can't create your own functions called randint. So you're kind of polluting your namespace when you statically import. So it can be really convenient, but it's just something that you got to be aware of. You don't want to, because if you created your own function called randint, it would override this random function. So the last thing that you can do is that you can just say from random import star, and that's just a quick way to say star just means everything. From random import everything. We're going to statically import all of its functions. So now we can just say print randint. We could also say print random, and they will both just, since they're both statically imported, we can just specify their function names and that's it. So that's how you use modules. They're really helpful. You should definitely check to see if there's something already out there created for you before you try to implement it yourself. So just be aware of that, and that's how you use them.